On this episode of Cash Chronicles, we're going to meet Doug Mainers, who made $20,000 on one wholesale deal that took him less than a day's worth of time.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Real Estate Cash Chronicles, where we speak with real investors from around the country to break down individual deals they've completed, showing you the actual timeline of events that it took to make a profit. Making money in real estate isn't a mystery. It's a step-by-step process. But once you complete one, you'll never think about cash the same way. Let's get started.
Yeah. So Doug, man, thanks for joining us today. And I'm super excited about talking to you about, the deal that was, pivotal to your continued success. So just simply stated, man, how did you find it?
Well, this particular deal, I guess for simplistic purposes, we'll call it the Duplin Deal because it was located in Duplin County. So maybe that'll help a little bit. But the Duplin Deal was actually a for sale by owner. But it turned out to be a probate deal. They had inherited the house when their grandparents, I think it was a grandmother, had passed on. And so it was actually a probate deal that was a for sale by owner.
Very nice. Very nice. So after you put two and two together and you found out that it was a probate, it was a for sale by owner. So just kind of reading in between the lines here, did you just call the number on the for sale by owner sign, or what'd you do next?
Yeah, it was actually wasn't off a sign. It was actually found through, back, this has been a few years back before we had access to all this data. You had to do it old school. And so it was a situation where we were, identifying some for sale by owners and reaching out and contacting them that were advertising their properties for sale. And so it was a situation where, I reached out to the motivated seller, contacted them, found out a little bit about the property, obviously. And then through a series of questions, it's important to ask the right questions to a seller, obviously. I was able to determine that the house was inherited. And that also determined that there was no mortgage on the house, which is an important piece to know. And so that's always helpful to kind of know that, what they owe when you want to formulate an offer. And so, yeah, it was through those series of questions, the seller, disclosed a number of different things to me. And the interesting thing about this property, Patrick, was that it actually was a total of 2.43 acres. So the house sat on some acreage, and then on a larger parcel. And anyway, so that's good. You'll see in a minute when we how that came into play. It made it turn into a really good deal.
Okay, sweet. So I like what I hear so far. So you're able to make contact with them, and let's dig into that a little bit. So you made contact, and you said you asked the right questions. Can you share a few of those right questions?
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's very helpful, when you're talking to a motivated seller, it's important to have, obviously, criteria in front of you. It's good to have maybe a form or format that you can literally walk a seller through to ask the questions that you need to, important information that you need to know. For instance, a good question may be, hey, do you owe anything on the property? Sometimes they'll disclose that, sometimes they won't. In this case, they disclosed, no, we don't know anything. It was an inherited property. Well, then I knew it was a probate situation where the person had inherited the property. Now, obviously, the next question you want to ask about that is, do you own it outright? And now, has it been through, clear the probate process? Do you own the property? Has it been deeded to you and so forth? Which it had, yes, they own the property outright so they can move forward. So, obviously, once you find out the situation with the seller, there may be follow-up questions you need to ask to make sure that they're in control of that property now. Because as you know, Patrick, sometimes you can get into some legal things where the judge may be making some decision. I mean, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It could be, there's other things that can happen. So you want to, just ask them point blank. Most people will be straight up with you and let you know whether or not that they have, ownership and or control of that property, which they did. And so then I proceed to ask them more details specific to the property. So you want to know, tell me a little bit about the house, how many bedrooms, baths, square footage, what kind of condition is the house in? When was their last updates done? I'm going kind of fast, but you get the idea.
That's okay.
I hadn't done it. I've only done it once. I'm like, no, I've done it a few times, right? But then, a really important question that I think a lot of investors forget to ask is how much land is with the property? Now, this was important in this case. because then he said, oh, it's on 2.43 acres. Well, I tell you, I've been able to successfully negotiate a number of real estate deals and wholesale deals. This happened to be a wholesale deal because it had additional land, immediately in your mind, you're thinking subdivide. In fact, a couple of the biggest wholesale deals, this one included, where I made a substantial wholesale fee, was properties that could be subdivided. In both cases, the seller did not know that. And so there's a tip for you. Absolutely, for you guys. There's a nugget. So always do your research. Can the property be subdivided? Does it meet the zoning criteria? And now all of a sudden, there's a whole new avenue of value that's added to that property.
All right. So I love everything I hear so far. And thanks for being so open and sharing so fluid with us, Doug.
Sure.
And look, just quick interjection to all of our Connected Investors family and listeners. Hey, look, make sure you go and find the notes for this podcast. Obviously, it's going to be packed with probate information. It can get a little sticky, it can get a little tricky, but being a member of the Connected Investors community is going to make it a lot easier. And hey, look, that's what we're here for. Your success, our success. It's mutual. It's mutual together. Okay, so you've given us some good questions. You've kind of unwrapped the candy bar. So tell me about the deal. Tell me what you got on paper, what that looked like, maybe the number, the time frame. So let's continue to go with that a little bit, Doug.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So, after some additional questions and things that, obviously talking with the seller, finding out about the property, the condition, the location, all these different factors. One other quick question I'll just throw out there, Patrick, before I get into the numbers is, do you have any other interest in the property, or do you have any other offers on the property? That's the key question to ask. In this case, they said no, they had no other offers. Well, what that does is immediately opens up for you to be able to say, hey, I'm the only player. So now that's going to affect how I negotiate. Now, if they say, well, yeah, I've had 3 other offers. Well, my follow-up question is going to be, hey, will you mind telling me what they offered you?
The Connected Investors app connects you with investors, notifies you of available properties, helps locate cash buyers, and secure private funding to close deals. Set up in seconds to become a member of the Connected Investors social network. Now you can scroll through your main feed to find cash buyers, see investment properties not available to the general public, and network with investors by adding your own comments to a thread to keep the conversation going. The Control Center is your connection to add properties to sell, start new discussions, connect with local investors, and even find private funding. The Notifications tab will keep you alerted to new investment properties and offers. You'll also find new friend requests to connect directly with the community to build your network. From the property marketplace, you'll be able to find, favorite, and make offers on investment properties. Download Connected Investors today to find, figure, fund, and flip investment properties on the go.
Sometimes the seller will tell you, oh, well, one of them offered me 60, one offered me 80, and sometimes they'll just blurt it out. You just want to get as much information as they can. Now, sometimes sellers won't do that. They'll say, well, I'd rather not say, well, it's okay, not a problem. I just was curious, And so needless to say, in this case, they didn't have any other offers, no other interest at that point. Now, one advantage of that is obviously I jumped on this. I had, contacted them as soon as I had seen this particular, listing that they had put out. Or advertisement, I guess I should say. And so, I was the first player in the game. So that always helps. And so needless to say, we negotiated a little bit. He told me what he wanted for the property. Knowing that they didn't know anything on the property, I knew there was probably some room there for negotiation. And we actually settled on an amount of $57,000 for the property, which in that location, I knew the ARV, just knowing that area. I knew the ARV, if that property was beautifully remodeled and maintained, would be somewhere in the $120,000 range, especially with that much land. Even without that much land, I knew it would be. And so, I kind of, at 57,000, I knew there was an opportunity there to generate some profit. So that's kind of the amount we settled on, was 57,000. I didn't offer them any earnest money. Usually if you don't bring up earnest money, many times a motivated seller like that, that's a probate property. They're not going to say anything. Sometimes they will, but in this case, I didn't offer any earnest money. I just said, hey, I'm willing to go ahead and put together the contract. We'll get that signed and we'll get moving forward to selling for you. Now, the other question you asked was about timing. Is that right?
Well, you know what? If I didn't, that was going to be where I was heading. So I'm glad to hear about the economic details and timing. I mean, how long did it take for you to go from communication to having that contract signed? Open up about that a little bit.
Sure. No, absolutely. One thing you got to consider is being the first one in the game, so to speak, the first one to make an offer is you don't want to drag your feet on that. You want to go ahead, fortunately, I already kind of knew the numbers for that area, so I was able to formulate an offer based on what I was told, but I also went out and looked at the property. I walked the property. So, we negotiated right up front on the phone on a price, but I said, hey, let me do this. I want to go back. Can I get a good look at the property? Now, as a wholesaler, is it critical to look at that property? Yes and no. Okay. Now, if you're wholesaling remotely and you can't get there, guess what? You don't have a choice, but you're going to have to put it under contract based on the factors that you know, and that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. But because I was close enough to this property that I could drive out and look at it, I decided to go out and take a look at it. I said, okay, yeah. And so when we talked about the 57,000, I said, well, I'll tell you what, let me go take a look at it. I'm going to ride out there today. I'll look at it. And, if it's exactly the condition that you told me, I'll go ahead and put an offer together. We'll meet up and get that signed. So I wanted to go ahead and attack this thing and get it done right now. But I wanted to lay eyes on just to make sure that seller was telling me the truth about the condition. So in this case, this is exactly what I did. I drove out that day. I looked at the property. They were very honest about the condition. And so I also wanted to look at the surrounding properties, what's around the area. You always want to look at the neighborhood. In this case, it was a rural property. Is it in North Carolina? Is it next to a hog farm? I mean, yeah, Duplin County, that's the first thing in your mind said, if you got a hog farm in the backyard, that's going to affect the value of that property. So fortunately, this one was rural, but it was very nice rural. It was well-kept farms, well-kept land out there. And I wanted to look at being 2.43 acres. Immediately, my antenna went up to say, hey, what can be done with this? Can it be subdivided? So my next thought, obviously, you want to go in, you want to take a look at the zoning for that particular parcel. All this can be found typically on the county websites nowadays. Or if you've got a really good data provider, they can get you that information as well that you may subscribe to, which is very valuable, by the way. But that being said, in this case, I saw that, the surrounding land looked like it could be supportive of a potentially another build. And that was the reason I looked at that, because now you've got, instead of one investment property, you've got two investment properties, one with the house, with the lot on the house, and one with the land, adjacent that could potentially support a second house. And so that was kind of my thinking there, and obviously adds great value when you can formulate a deal like that. So anyway, I put the property under contract that day. I met with them that evening. We got the property under contract. And then I made sure I set aside, usually I try to go at least 4 weeks of due diligence, as much as they'll let me. And then about 8 weeks to closing, sometimes with the opportunity to do it shorter. Obviously, if I wanted to, in this case, I was going to wholesale this deal. I want to be able to have time to identify a particular, an investor buyer for it. So that gives me at least 4 weeks of due diligence time. But in this case, they really didn't even require a due diligence fee. They didn't do any of that. I didn't have to worry about it. So I put myself some time out there that I could do that, and then an additional 4 weeks to close it. But we actually end up closing it sooner than 8 weeks. But yeah, just to give you an idea of timetable.
Well, look, Doug, you are on fire and supplying me and our listeners with tons of awesome information. Let me just interject a quick few things. One would be something Doug said that I want to expand on just a little bit, is when you have the opportunity, you won't always, but when you have the opportunity to go look and walk the property like Doug mentioned, it's going to give you a new level of legitimacy. And then when when the seller is asking, why or when or who or how are you going to walk the property, a line that I've heard that's successful before to continue to legitimize is, I just want to make sure that I walk that property so that I can make you the best offer possible. So I found that to be a very valuable phrase in my experience. And then the other thing is, tell me about this subdividing. I mean, I'll tell you what, before you jump in there.
Looking for some cash for your next flip or rental? Just visit privatelenders.com and get matched with hundreds of verified lenders from around the country who are looking to help you with your next real estate deal.
But that's where we're going is Doug had mentioned something about data provider. Hello, connected investors. Hey, make sure you're using what we offer and all the options and simple orientations that are going to make your life easier. So now, all that being said, thanks again, Doug. Tell me about how the details of the subdividing. I mean, so you've got the whole thing under contract, the dwelling and the 2.43 acres, but you're going to intend to subdivide it and then sell it, or you're looking for that end investor who you're going to just supply them with the information of, hey, look, you could subdivide this. Just tell me more about that.
You know, and you do bring something up here, Patrick, that, yeah, you could go either way. As a wholesaler, you could potentially go to the effort to subdivide a property yourself, you know, and arrange that. But in this case, no, I was looking at this specific because I did have buyers that were interested in doing spec homes, spec builds. And so I already had that kind of in my back pocket that I knew that if the land could support it, then I had buyers that would be interested in not only buying the house and remodeling and selling it, but also going ahead and, you know, building on the additional parcel. So as a wholesaler, the more legwork you can do up front as your time allows. Now, sometimes you don't have time to do all this, and that's okay. You can put it out there to your buyer, let them do the legwork. But I think you stand a greater chance of making bigger money and credibility, like you mentioned, Patrick, when you can go to them, when you've already looked at the property, you've already, you know, maybe done some due diligence yourself to determine that, yes, there's a large enough parcel here that we can add a second property based on the zoning. In this case, it was RA zoning, rural agriculture, which, you know, in those situations, you have a lot of latitude. So it was very helpful. I already kind of knew that would be okay. The second thing, because there was no water and sewer in this area, I knew it had to make sure that there was a situation where you had a soil evaluation. Now, as a wholesaler, I've actually paid for soil evaluations before, you know, myself to make sure it perked before I presented it to an investor. But in this case, I was in a win situation. The property itself, even if it didn't perk, even if we couldn't put a second house on it, it was still a desirable property. There's still a profit to be made on it. And so I didn't have to worry too much with regard to, you know, having to make sure everything was right. So the buyer ended up doing the soil evaluation test and all that before they closed on it. And sure enough, it supported it. They had a survey done, and yeah, it was beautiful the way it's set up. So, but yeah, that's kind of the idea there is, if you don't know who your buyers are, if you don't know that you have a buyer that's interested in it, presenting that buyer with that opportunity as a wholesaler could open up a new world for you.
Yeah.
Because now if your due diligence, you go to that buyer and you're like, hey, you're not presenting them with a 3-bedroom, 1-bath home on 2.43 acres. You're presenting them with a 3-bedroom, 1-bath home on a half an acre with additional acre, you know, that can be developed. That's a whole different avenue, you know, because somebody, you know, if you could make that property do a number of different things in RA, you could put mobile homes on it. You could, you know, there's a lot of things you can do to it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, anyway, but yeah, hopefully that helps.
It did. I appreciate it. So, okay. So how long did it take from you getting the property under contract with the seller to having, you know, your wholesale assignment assigned? Just quick, how long?
Yeah. So basically what I did is, and just, you know, I'll make this brief, but what I did is I actually met the buyer out there because I wanted the buyer to have my vision for what this property could be.
Sure.
And show him my research. And just a little tip there. You can't always meet the buyer out there. I get that. You may have to share that over the phone or whatever, or send him a, you know, email or send her a text message or whatever, letting her know, hey, this is what, you know, this is what I foresee what you could do with this property. In this case, I met him out there because I wanted to give him my vision of what could be done. But anyway, that being said, so it was very quickly within that, you know, a few days, I had the buyer out there. We walked the property. We went in, we took a look at it. You know, and I arranged all that as the wholesaler. You don't always have to do that, but that's a good idea if you can arrange it, because I would rather be the one with that buyer than have the seller meeting the buyer and
Yes.
they get to talk, and you get the idea.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay. But what was the answer to the question?
The answer to the question was, what I did is I took my assignment fee, the entire assignment fee at closing. And the reason I did that, because I knew this buyer already. I knew him well. Now, here's what you want to consider. If you don't know that buyer well, then you may want to either get some of the assignment fee or all the assignment fee at the time of assignment, which I signed it over to him in a matter of days.
Okay.
So you might want to get the whole fee up front, but in this case, I got a substantial assignment fee. So I structured it a little bit differently. I waited and got that fee at closing. I didn't require them to put down a deposit because I was literally working with this investor hand in hand. I helped him coordinate the survey. I helped him coordinate the soil evaluation. I went out and found him because he was busy. This guy was a busy business person. This is when I was full-time hustle. And so I took my extra steps because I was going to make a big, assignment fee on this. So I was willing to go the extra mile for this particular seller. But there's been times I've gotten the whole assignment fee up front at the time of assignment. So you can structure it several different ways.
Nice. Okay. So meat and potatoes question here, man. So we know that you had it under offer to purchase for $57,000. How much did you assign it for?
Okay. I signed it for $77,000. So it was a $20,000 assignment fee.
Sweet. So you made 20 grand. So here's the next. So 20 grand. How much time from, starting with the for sale by owner, working into that offer to purchase, meeting the buyer out there, meeting the perk test people out there, all the way to closing, how much time did you really have rolled up into this particular deal?
Well, there you go. It was about a 6-week process. To get all that done because we did want to get soil evaluation. We wanted to get that stuff done prior to closing, although it wouldn't have really mattered. But my personal time involved in that, couple trips out to the property, some phone calls, things like that. I mean, I may have had 3 or 4 hours, something in that way. So it wasn't a lot.
Fantastic. So if I hear you correctly, you cleared 20K. Let's round it off and call it 4 hours. So you were making $5 grand an hour.
Yeah, that's basically true. Absolutely. Yep.
I don't, Doug, in real estate investing is great because you can make that chunks of cash rather quickly. Tell me about some of your long-term goals that you have reached by being a real estate investor.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate you asking that question. And one thing I'll throw another nugget out there for as a wholesaler. The nice thing about that, and again, I was an exclusive wholesaler. That's really all I did, except for this. Back, this has been a few years back, but as a wholesaler, you get first look at a property. So you get to cherry pick the ones that you might want to do a fix and flip with. So if, this particular property, I didn't want to do a fix and flip. It needed too much work. But let's say you go out and you get one that's a cosmetic fixer. You may not want to wholesale that one. You may decide, hold on. I may want to go, get some funding because, and be able to take that, get some funding from maybe a private or hard money lender, and because it's an easy fixer, and do a fix and flip on that particular property instead of wholesaling it. So that's kind of the beauty of getting out and looking at that property. Then you can make that decision. In this case, I didn't want to do that. But because I did do some of those fix and flips, I kind of transitioned ultimately into doing more fix and flips. And so that really became my bread and butter. Ultimately, as my business grew out, I was able to secure a project manager that kind of runs those for me now. So I don't have to be there for the day-to-day operations. I just write the checks and help with the vision of the property. But that being said, even now, I still have deals that I'll wholesale, that I'll flip, quick flip, that allow me the ability, because I may not want to fix and flip every deal. Maybe I get, offered a deal in a county that I don't really do a lot of business in, or maybe my crew is too tied up on some existing projects and I don't want to add another project right now. Why not monetize on those deals? That's why, I have buddies that are buy and hold investors. And I'm like, guys, why are you skipping on that deal just because it's not good to put a tenant in there? Why don't you wholesale it? I mean, I'm sure there may be a buyer if the numbers work for it. So, that's really what it's all about is, taking advantage of that. So I move more in the fix and flip arena and still do some wholesale deals as well from time to time, because there's always people looking for deals. No doubt about that.
No doubt.
In terms of having that. And, and it's all about the numbers. And I'll mention, you mentioned the $20,000 and I'll wrap up with that. Why did I make 20 on that deal? Because what that investor was able to do is he was able to not only remodel the house and sell it and make a profit. So he was making somewhere around a $15,000 or $20,000 profit just on that one house. Not to mention, then he owned the land outright because he subdivided that out once he bought it. He owns the additional parcel, which was about 1.7 or so acres, over an acre, because I think it was 2.4. Yeah, 2.4. So actually, yeah. So you get the idea. And then he went on to make almost $80,000 on that deal. By the time he put a spec house on it, sold it, he did very, very well. So if he's making 80 to 90, I want to make a large amount as a wholesaler. So I made 20. Sometimes you can't make 20 on every deal. You may only make 5 or 10,
Sure. So if you were not a real estate investor, what would you be doing, man?
Oh, man. Well, my background's in education. I taught school for a lot of years, and I'd probably still be a broke school teacher. It's an honorable profession. But I tell you what, when you got kids to put through college and those kinds of things, it's tough to survive on a teacher's salary. So I started doing real estate part-time as a side hustle, and ultimately it turned into full-time. And I was making more money part-time than I was making full-time.
Want to be like a guest on our show and make some cash in real estate? Join the center of the real estate investing universe and start connecting with free education, off-market deals, cash buyers, and even funding partners. ConnectedInvestors.com has been changing the game for people around the country since 2005. So just visit ConnectedInvestors.com/cash so you can start doing more with real estate, no matter where you are in your journey to financial freedom. Seriously, guys, if you are brand new to this and looking to close your first deal, there is not a better head start out there to help you find properties and learn what you need to make cash. If you are already an experienced flipper or landlord, then Connected Investors gives you access to dozens of unique inventory sources and automation that cannot be found on any other platform in the industry. ConnectedInvestors.com/cash. Go there, claim your free account, get your gift pack, and then, don't look back. Jump in and put that whole ecosystem to work for you. Because all guests of this show come directly from the Connected Investors community and would love to interview you after your first or next life-changing real estate deal. Peace, y'all.